Part 1. I was hired for a small private event at Oprah's estate, a quiet dinner meant for a handful of selected guests. Security sealed our phones and reminded us to follow every instruction. Then a guest walked in without any check. His steps were slightly delayed, like he was copying someone walking ahead of him. Oprah greeted everyone, but she avoided looking at him, as if seeing him directly made her uneasy. Even the staff kept glancing his way, noticing something odd they couldn't name yet. In the kitchen, the staff whispered about the strange guest. No one had seen him arrive. When I went out to refill trays, he appeared behind me with no footsteps. He asked, "How long do humans stay awake before they weaken?" His tone was polite, but something beneath it sounded borrowed, as if he had learned each word slowly. I tried to focus on my work, but every detail around him felt slightly unreal. Oprah moved with her usual calm, yet she kept glancing toward the locked hallway. When she passed me, she quietly said, "If he asks you to follow him anywhere, don't." Her voice wasn't afraid, just tired, like she'd dealt with this before tonight. I didn't understand the warning, but it stayed in my mind. Every time he entered a room, conversations paused for a beat, as though everyone felt something they couldn't explain. I stepped into a hallway to grab dishes, and he was already there. In the mirror beside him, his reflection didn't match his movement. He smiled slowly, like he knew I saw it. Before I could back away, a staff member called my name, pulling me out. I pretended nothing was wrong, but the moment stayed with me. The air around him felt charged, like it shifted whenever he focused on someone. But that wasn't the part that scared me. Out in the garden, he stood staring at the sky, speaking in voices that didn't belong to him, one deep, one sharp, one metallic. When I stepped on a leaf, his head snapped toward me, turning too far, too fast. He switched to a normal tone instantly. "Did you hear anything unusual?" I said no, but a layered whisper behind me answered, "Human detected." I tried to steady my breathing as I walked back toward the warm lights of the event. During the candle circle, every guest held hands except him. The candle flames leaned toward his body, pulled as if by a silent breath. He copied each expression, a second too late, like he was learning emotions in real time. Oprah stayed on the opposite side of the room, watching him with quiet caution. No one spoke about it, but everyone sensed the shift, the strange gravity he carried that bent the atmosphere just by standing still. Later, he bent to pick up a fork, and his back folded like metal hinges, smooth and silent. He straightened instantly and smiled, unaware of how unnatural it looked. A guest gasped softly, but no one confronted him. I felt a cold shiver creep up my spine as I stepped away. Every instinct told me something was terribly wrong with him. I didn't know the real danger was just starting. I was sent to the storage area with extra plates and stumbled on medical-looking equipment and diagrams of human joints. A projector flickered footage of people moving unnaturally, as if being studied. An assistant caught me and whispered, "He's not supposed to see this." My stomach turned. This was beyond any human guest I had seen. Something calculated, something learning, was among them tonight. The strange guest never left the main room, but his eyes tracked me constantly. When I looked down at my tray, I felt a cold sense of observation, like he was measuring my reactions. Guests laughed quietly around him, oblivious. I tried to focus on serving, but the air shifted whenever he moved. It wasn't just his presence. It was as if the room itself recognized he didn't belong here, like a puzzle piece from another world. At the candle circle, he remained on the edge. I noticed his shadow bent differently, angles wrong against the walls. I tried to blink it away, thinking exhaustion was playing tricks. But when he smiled, the lines on his face stretched just a fraction too far. Guests were unaware, but I froze, sensing something studying me as much as I studied him. Every instinct screamed, "He's not human." He leaned forward slightly, whispering, What do humans fear most when they see themselves? The voice warped subtly, glitching between tones. I backed up instinctively. The lights flickered. The room seemed to hold its breath. Suddenly, he froze mid-step, like someone paused the world. I realized then, the real threat wasn't his actions. It was that he could observe without being caught. I should have left then. Oprah's security finally escorted him into a private room. The event ended abruptly. Staff were given double pay and a strict confidentiality form. I felt relief, but unease lingered. On the way out, a faint metallic echo followed my steps. I caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window tall, smooth skin, impossible proportions. Even outside, I couldn't escape the sense that he was still watching, learning, waiting for the next moment. Days later, I saw photos from the party online. Everyone was there, smiling, except him. At first, I thought he had been edited out, but in the reflection of a mirror behind Oprah, a tall figure stood still, skin flawless, eyes staring straight at the camera. My heart raced. No one else could see it. I shivered, realizing the images didn't capture reality. They captured a shadow of it, one that might never leave. Then I received an email from an unknown sender. Would you like to help him understand humans better next time? My hands trembled. I stared at the screen, knowing it wasn't a joke. Even months later, I felt his gaze in crowded rooms, in reflective surfaces, in corners of my vision that should have been empty. I couldn't explain it, but I knew one thing. He was still out there, still learning and waiting. Weeks after the party, I kept replaying his movements in my mind. The way he tilted his head too far, the glint in his eyes that seemed to study human reactions, it haunted me. I tried to convince myself I had imagined it, that exhaustion had warped my perception. Yet late at night, I would catch shadows bending in impossible ways, like his presence had imprinted on the very air around me. One evening, I was walking past a mirror in my apartment when I froze. For a fraction of a second, a tall, smooth-skinned figure appeared behind me. I spun around nothing. My reflection was normal, but the image lingered in my mind, like a memory of something real. I realized he wasn't confined to that party. Somehow, his observation followed me, subtle but insistent, like a student who never forgets a lesson. I started noticing small things at home. Objects slightly moved, shadows in corners that weren't mine. It felt like he had left traces, tiny calibrations of his study of humans. Every interaction with people now seemed observed through an invisible lens. I couldn't shake the feeling of being measured, analyzed, catalogued. His presence had become a silent equation I couldn't solve, a logic that didn't belong to this world. One night, I heard a whisper through my door, a layered voice echoing multiple tones. Are you ready to help him? I froze. No one was there. The air felt heavy, like it had weight. I realized then that he wasn't just studying humans, he was learning me. Every movement, every thought, catalogued. Something was watching me that whole time. I tried to distract myself with work, friends, and sleep, but the memories kept returning. The way he bent unnaturally, the mirrored reflection that didn't match reality, the layered voice in the garden, every detail replayed like a glitching video. I couldn't explain it logically. It didn't behave like a human, yet no one else noticed. I felt trapped between disbelief and undeniable truth, terrified of seeing him again. Months later, a mutual friend mentioned a story about the party, joking about a weird guy who moved like a robot. Everyone laughed, but I couldn't. I had seen him clearly, studied every imperfection in his mimicry, every twitch in his movements. No one else remembered or acknowledged him. It was like he existed in a layer between reality and perception, present for me, but invisible to everyone else. The final photo from the event haunted me most. Everyone posed, smiling normally, but in the background mirror, his elongated silhouette lingered. No facial features, just the smooth contours of skin, head tilted unnaturally. I stared at it for hours, unable to look away. Somehow, he had embedded himself into reality's reflection, a ghostly observer whose study of humans hadn't ended and whose presence was far from finished. I started avoiding reflective surfaces, mirrors, windows, even spoons. Every reflection felt like a potential window for him to watch, to study. My apartment became a maze of shadows and hidden angles. The air felt heavier in certain corners, like it retained his presence. I told myself it was paranoia, yet my instincts screamed otherwise. Something about that night had tethered him to me, unseen but undeniable. I received a subtle package at my door, an envelope with no return address. Inside was a folded photograph from the party, cropped to show only the background mirror where he had stood. No one else was visible. My hands trembled. It wasn't a prank. Someone or something was sending reminders that the night wasn't over. I felt the familiar unease, the same cold pressure on my chest as when he first appeared. I noticed subtle movements in my peripheral vision, shadows bent in impossible angles. Objects shifted slightly, never enough to notice unless I was looking. My sleep became restless, filled with dreams of tall, smooth figures observing me silently. Even during the day, I felt the lingering weight of his gaze. I realized I had entered a world where he could exist alongside me without being seen, cataloging every detail. Late one night, I heard his voice layered in my apartment again. Do you understand now? It came from every direction, yet there was no one. My heart raced. I remembered the locked hallway, the mirrored reflection, the garden whispers. He wasn't done. He had learned enough to interact subtly, to manipulate perception. I realized with a sinking feeling, something was observing me that I could never escape. I avoided social events, fearing he might be there, invisible to all but me. But the weight of observation never left. Even in my apartment, in private, I felt its subtle shifts in air, the faint pressure of presence in empty rooms. I questioned my sanity, but the memories of the party, the mirrored reflection, and the layered voices kept me grounded in a terrifying reality. He existed beyond the perception of others. One evening, I tried to photograph the apartment with my phone. Every image appeared normal at first. Then, when zooming into mirrors or reflective surfaces, a tall, featureless figure appeared in the corner. Not fully visible, just hints of smooth skin and unnatural posture. Every time I looked, the image seemed to shift, adapting. He was learning how to hide, yet still mark his presence, reminding me he could never truly leave. I decided to speak to a friend about it, someone I trusted. I described the mirrored reflection, the garden whispers, and the storage room. They laughed, but I could see a flicker of unease in their eyes. Maybe I sounded insane, or maybe they saw something I didn't. My instincts screamed he wasn't just present at the party, he was persistent. He had embedded himself in my life in ways I couldn't measure, and the feeling of being watched never left. My friend suggested I take a short trip to clear my mind. I agreed, hoping distance would break whatever connection lingered. But even at the hotel, reflections flickered strangely. In the elevator mirror, my silhouette looked normal, but a faint second outline lagged behind me, tall and smooth. I blinked, and it vanished. I knew then the problem wasn't my apartment or the party. It was me. He had attached himself somehow. The hotel room felt cold, despite the heater running. While brushing my teeth, I caught a glimpse in the bathroom mirror. A tall figure standing behind me. I spun around, nothing. My breath fogged the glass, and through the mist, a message formed. Still learning. My heart dropped. I wiped the mirror clean, but the words remained etched faintly beneath the surface. I realized he wasn't haunting me. He was studying me, constantly. The next morning, I checked out early. The receptionist asked if I had slept well. I hesitated, then nodded. Behind her, in the reflection of the lobby window, I saw him closer than ever. Not moving, not blinking, just observing. His posture was wrong, bent in a way that didn't match his human disguise. I grabbed my bag and rushed outside. The sun didn't offer comfort. His presence stayed thick around me, like a shadow that learned how to follow. On the ride home, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number, a photo of me sitting in that exact bus seat. But the angle was impossible, taken from behind a reflective panel that wasn't there. In the corner of the picture, his smooth silhouette leaned unnaturally close. The message read, "Observation improving." My blood ran cold. He was getting better at blending in. Back home, I covered every mirror, every shiny surface. It didn't matter. At night, I heard subtle shifting sounds, like someone calibrating metal joints. The air would distort for a brief second, like heat waves bending reality. I knew he was testing boundaries, learning which angles let him appear without fully revealing himself. He wasn't haunting me in the traditional sense. He was practicing, refining, preparing for something I couldn't explain. I found scratches on my hallway wall, thin, straight, almost surgical, as if someone had dragged metallic fingertips along the paint, tracing measurements. I followed the marks, and they stopped at my bedroom mirror. Even covered, I felt a pulse behind the cloth, like something eager waited to be seen. Every instinct told me not to lift it. My breath shook as I backed away. Whatever he was becoming, he no longer needed the party to appear. That night, I woke to a soft humming. Not mechanical, more like layered human breaths played through a broken speaker. My room was dark, but the air in one corner felt heavier. I reached for my phone to turn on the flashlight. Before I could, a voice whispered from the darkness. Multiple tones blended into one, closer to complete. I froze. He wasn't just mimicking humans anymore. He was evolving with each encounter. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was over. But every reflective surface in my apartment felt wrong. Too still, too smooth. I saw glimpses of him in mirrors, windows, even in my camera feed. He wasn't moving like a human. He was calculating. My own reflection blinked out of sync. I realized then he hadn't left. He was still here, embedded in my perception, waiting for the next moment to learn, observe, and evolve. Weeks later, I received another email. A single photo from the party, cropped perfectly. Everyone else was gone. But in the corner of the mirror, a tall, smooth figure leaned unnaturally close, watching me through the lens. No words, just presence. My phone vibrated with a new message. Your observation is improving. I stared at it, frozen. The study wasn't over. It had only begun. Would you survive being watched like this?